Welcome to the Multiverse Comics Podcast. On today's episode, you have Steven and Scott, and you don't have me. This is Jason. Today, Steven and Scott have a great conversation about Starman. Listen in and enjoy.
Well, hello, kids and kittens and whatnot. This is our attempt at the podcast tonight. Jason is once again on assignment in Budapest or wherever. No, he's actually helping a kid move somewhere.
I think I think you would much rather be here.
Yeah.
But there you go. But this gives us a super opportunity to right a multiverse podcast wrong. What has it been, a year?
It has been a year. When we started this podcasting thing, I had certain ideas in my head about going down some nostalgic, old school comic book publishing topics, from those of you that might remember First Comics to Epic Comics and other things. And a personal favorite of mine, and I know Stephen enjoys it as well, is James Robinson's Starman from the early 2000s. We recorded it. I was very proud of it. And as new audio guys, we flushed that one down the toilet.
Yeah, it was not good. It was the whatever went wrong was severe enough to really spoil anyone's enjoyment of least of all our own. But the problem is, and this is completely on me. It's not on good Mr. Scott at all. Is that having done the show, or having done that episode, I needed to put some time and distance before we attempted to redo it, because that's just me. So,
and I know you kids enjoy our well orchestrated. So what are you reading this week? And our best sight gags of holding up the preview magazine, going, "Isn't this a great cover on a podcast?"
Right. Yes.
So,
yeah, it's funny you should say that, because while we're sitting here and talking, I'm glancing over at the table and I see that we've got in the Fourth World Omnibus by Jack Kirby, and it's got a close-up face of Big Barda on the spine, and I'm like, now that's going to look great on anyone's shelf.
Yes,
because it's Kirby and it's Big Barda, and she's got that steely-eyed look, and there you go. So anyway, but yes, so we are here today. We are gathered here today to chat about all things Starman. I believe, just lay out a little bit of the history. Starman as a name goes all the way back to the golden age of comics. Yes. Okay?
Yes, he was created in the 1940s.
1940s.
I had all this written down too, kids, and it's just been that kind of day at the shop that's all at the house. So we're gonna wing it a little bit.
Well, it gives you guys an opportunity that if you want to learn more, go on the internet, where everything is true and factual. But yeah, so this name Starman, it's a golden age character. It has been as a character name, it's been retooled a few times. I would say my first exposure to anything Starman would have been the Will Payton series, the character Will Payton, in the late 80s. Didn't buy it, didn't read it, but I remember seeing the house ads in whatever DC books I was reading. And then spilling out of
Zero Hour,
DC launched a new version of Starman, and I think we're looking at like 95.
I think
somewhere around there, 95, 94, 95.
94, Jack.
94.
So, as Stephen was saying, Starman, for longtime DC fans, was Ted Knight.
Yep.
He was a member of the Justice Society, Earth 2 at the time.
Right.
Then, we merged them all into one big happy universe. And
some crisis, something
like that.
Crisis.
Some guy named Perez and Wolfman had something to do with it. And as DC does with the Justice Society, they have a hard time figuring out where to put them. So my first experience with Starman was in the All-Star comics, All-Star Squadron, where Roy Thomas and Jerry Ordway were drawing Ted Knight.
That was a mid to late 70s book?
Early 80s, 82,
okay.
because it ran up till Crisis. Crisis was in 85 because they had to reset the book.
Okay.
Now you're thinking All-Star Comics where Power Girl showed up.
Yeah,
That started at issue 57 and ran into Adventure Comics. This is All-Star Squadron.
Okay.
Where when Roy Thomas got run out of Marvel for a little bit after writing Invaders, he said, well, screw that, I want to write World War II again, and he started writing it with DC with their group. I always had an interest in that character because he sat down and Ted just built a rod that helped you fly.
The Cosmic Rod.
And so, as Steven said, leading up to Zero Hour, where once again DC thinks to editorial thinks to fix continuity, we have to flush the Justice Society down the toilet. Age them up to what they should be, and croak off a few of them. And Ted Knight gets to be in his 90s, and he passes the mantle on to his older son, David.
David, right.
And David actually showed up for the first time in Will Payton's Starman for one episode, 2 issues. I've got it right here.
I did not know that. That's
so
interesting.
He Robinson doesn't get creator credit for him. David puts on the suit. First issue, which was a 0 issue for Starman.
That's right.
In a very noir Opal City, which we've all decided back in the original podcast that it's mirrored after Philadelphia. Is that what we said? Boston. Okay, Boston. And he gets shot right through the chest.
Yeah.
And falls out of the sky.
And that's the end of the series.
So
we're going to talk at length about one book.
They stretched that out for 75 issues because every issue was him falling. Every panel as his arms frailed and legs.
Yes, he fell off a 73-story building.
And every other issue is a memory that he had in the past before he hit the ground. Wouldn't that be a torturous book, kids?
Yes, it would.
No. But
so you have... James Robinson is an English writer. I don't know a heck of a lot about him other than he's an English writer. But I believe he has spent a lot of time living in the United States.
Yes.
Okay. So he's very familiar with, and presumably has an interest in, because I think it comes through in his writing. He's got quite an interest in all things Americana. So essentially what my take on the character is that he got David Knight out of the way in the first issue, and then we have a series of events and situations that are adding to this growing concern that is, will the younger Knight, Jack, take over the family business, so to speak, and that then leads into what I think is not only one of the best comics I think that's ever been produced, consistently produced. Okay, so I think all told, I think there's 80 issues. Yes. I think in the series. This was pretty. The quality is consistent right the way throughout. So that alone is a reason for celebration right there and then. Okay. But it's more than that, because James Robinson wrote the whole thing through. The first half of the series, the artwork is by
Tony
Harris. And the latter part was Peter Snejberg, I think is how you pronounce it. Very different styles, but they both work extraordinarily well, especially given where the narrative goes throughout those 80 issues. I going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that, because we talked about this in a previous podcast, when the subject of Neil Gaiman's Sandman came up.
Okay.
And that was a book that ran 75 issues, and obviously it's much lauded and beloved and honored, and quite rightly so. I made a comment that I actually think that series went a little too long.
Yes, I remember that.
And the section that I feel could have done with some really strong editing was the kindly ones. It was that final arc. I love Mark Hempel's art. I'm a huge Gregory fan. If you ever get the chance and you're in a comic book store and you stumble across Mark Hempel's Gregory, I highly recommend picking it up because it's hilarious. But there was something about the way the story went and the art and the length just didn't fit. And I kind of remember feeling, well, I do remember feeling like, I really wish this thing would just wrap up. And the reason why I say all of this is that, number one, I think Starman could have gone longer.
Yes.
So when I found that they were pulling the plug at a certain point, it was like, oh man. And because it felt like, oh, there's so many more stories to tell. The quality is excellent. The art was fantastic. Starman, as a series, ends on its own very large multi-part final story. And I know I'm going to butcher this, but I'm not French, clearly. Grand
Gouliag or...
No, it's
Guignol.
Grand Guignol. I'm sure there's a French pronunciation that sounds nothing like what I've just said, but you kids at home get it. And I thought it was fantastic because it pulled in elements that went right the way back to that first issue. James Robinson is given reign, effectively, to create a whole new character. As you say, David had been in before. I didn't know that.
And I learned that when I researched it for the first podcast. I had found that they'd written him in as David was going after Will Payton for using the name Starman, and at that point in time, Ted Knight was not part of the DC universe. Picked up the story, read it, kind of cute, fine. And I remember when this came out, I quickly enjoyed the father and son element that is rampant through this, of a son who on the surface acted like his dad's part-time job of being a superhero was lame, and he didn't really support that, and didn't want anyone to know how cool he thought it was.
Right.
He too had his sense of nostalgia because Jack's character is he's running a secondhand store.
Yeah,
vintage merchandise.
Antiques. Yeah.
And that store plays heavily into a lot of these stories. And even the fact that the cosmic rod that Ted Knight used and gave to David, handheld, fit in the palm of your hand, little protrusion at the top.
I'm not going to say what it kind of looks like.
Yeah,
but,
but then Jack tries using it. It doesn't take, but then Jack finds a unique one-off version that Ted used that they actually tied into the miniseries Golden Age. Much longer staff.
It's a staff, yeah.
That if you watch the CW show Stargirl, that staff...
That's the staff.
That came from, in DC comic continuity, Jack Knight. He passed it on to her when he retired to go raise his child.
Spoilers.
Oh, yeah, well, and I'm going to try to not spoil...
No, this has to be a spoiler-filled thing. But
there is, and you can get, these soft omnibuses to read, because I really recommend this to almost anyone that comes in that says, I'm kind of into superheroes, but I don't need all the silly capes and costumes, this really takes you through. He has the heart of a hero. But he has no desire to wear capes, cowls, or any of that. He doesn't complain about it. You don't hear him always, because sometimes these books are written with every time you look at someone in a cape and cowl, oh, that's dumb looking, that's dumb looking. He has his jacket and he has his goggles.
Well, actually, he is critical of the outfit, because in the beginning...
Yeah, he talked to the fin on the head, but like sometimes the trope is when you see other heroes, you're cracking on their costumes, and you don't ever see him bust up. He was with Superman and Batman. He doesn't ever bust up.
No, you're quite right. I'm what I'm thinking of is just there are moments where
there's a moment where he could have put on his father's Ted outfit, and he went, nope, not doing that. With it, he ends up a very Romeo and Juliet. He falls in love with his father's greatest nemesis daughter. She is a complete and utter whack job, and it's fun to watch her character development. Another sweet trope in here is about every year there's a black and white issue, and he gets to cross into the realm of the netherworlds and gets to have a conversation with his brother. And they work out those competitive brother, one-upness, and they really you get to see the love and the strength of their bond. It's just bittersweet because it's developing after the brother is gone.
Yes.
And while I did not have a brother, that still hit me hard, because you can just feel I don't know if James lost a family member or something, but there is times that James says that Ted Knight is his voice all the time. That this was the closest.
Ted Knight or Jack Knight?
Jack Knight, Jack. Thank you. Yeah,
No
Jack Knight is is James in a lot of ways. I don't know if he suffered that kind of loss. I don't know if his father was a writer or whatever. But they crafted such a world that even some of the lamer DC characters became interesting. They brought the Shade in, which, if you remember, the Golden Age Shade, Silver Age Shade, just some guy wearing a black leotard and a top hat. They crafted such a beautiful character with that. And that translated into Stargirl's TV show. That actor that they had playing him in that series really rang true to me with the Starman reference material. But such a well thought out, made him immortal. His main job was to protect Opal in his own way. Anti-hero.
He's a Flash villain. He's a Golden Age Flash villain, and there's a lot of we're going to go all the way.
Let
me approach this from a different angle. So I really know very little about James Robinson, other than he happened to write one of my favorite comics of all time. I am aware of other things that he has written, but for the purposes of this show and what I have to say, it is Starman is the thing. It's the real deal. I actually came to this comic because when I was living in South Florida, there was a comic book shop not too far away from my house, and the guy who ran that, George, who in time actually became not only one of my closest friends, but he's also godfather to my daughters. We were chatting one day, and he said, "Are you reading Starman?" And I'm like, "No." And he was like, "You need to be reading this book. You absolutely need to be reading this book." So it's not like he wasn't approaching this like, "I'm going to tell everybody to read this book." No, it was a selective recommendation. He's like, he'd gotten to know me a little bit, and he's like, "I think this is the book for you. you need to read this book. And he helped me. It was only in issue like 5. Well, no, because that was late 95, early 96. So at least a year. I think the book had been going on for a year. But he helped me kind of get those back issues. You piece it together. And he was like, read it. And I read it and was hooked right from the get-go. What I think, if I may be so bold and brave, but not in that order, is that what James Robinson gave himself with this series was kind of an opportunity to write maybe all the comics that he wanted to write at that time. Because, and the reason why I say that is that under this through line of the hero's journey, the reluctant hero who not only becomes a hero, but also becomes one of the greatest heroes, and also asserts his place in the legacy, because he's a legacy hero. His dad was Starman, his brother was Starman, he is Starman, and at a later point in the narrative, he passes that torch or cosmic rod to a young girl to become Star Girl. And interwoven into this narrative are explorations of, from what I understand, and I believe this to be true, is every DC character that has ever held the name Starman.
Yeah, shows up in one capacity or another.
Or another. So you have Will Payton from the 1980s. You have the blue-skinned disco Starman from the 70s. You've got that Starman who I think only appeared in like one issue, but they're in there. And it's not; these aren't throwaway cameos. Each of these people occupies a very important part of the story. So James Robinson is getting to write this legacy exploration of a dynasty, if you will. But he's also getting to write. So that's American superhero comics. Is what he's getting to write. He's getting to write American superhero comics. And anybody who loves Americans, and I stress American because comics featuring fantastic characters are very different in England. They're very different in Europe. They're very different in Japan. America does have a cultural style on this. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, visit your local comic shop and just pick up a copy of Superman. That is an American superhero. Spider-Man, that is these are American superheroes. So he is writing an American superhero story. But what he's also writing is he's taking a stab at late Victorian literature or storytelling with his approach to the shade. He's also writing a crime epic. He's also writing a horror story. He's also writing a philosophical exploration of relationships and how, in Jack's case, death is not the barrier that it is for all of us. He is able to rediscover his brother in a very, very interesting and quite unique manner. Also, as I said at the start of this, I feel that James Robinson is quite interested in Americana. So making Jack Knight an antiques dealer, Things Past, I think it's the name of his store. He gets to put in little things about Bakelite telephones and 3D Viewmaster reels and Hawaiian shirts and old records and old toys from the 1950s, and it's all Jack kind of lives in this world of the past, but he is incredibly resentful in the beginning of the past that his name is associated with. just an interesting dichotomy that kind of plays out quite organically, and most importantly, it is believable. You believe this character, his journey, and the characters that he interacts with. There's James Robinson brought text pieces, the Shades Journal, which means that you get the comics. Sometimes you got the added bonus of a page of cursive writing that you had to read through, and it was brilliant, and you wanted to. The letters page on Starman was a hoot. I absolutely. I mean, letters pages in comics are always a bit of a,
mixed bag.
They really are, and I know they come and go. Sometimes they're in vogue, sometimes they're not. I know Marvel has brought letters pages back, and when I'm reading some of those books, I kind of skim through them, but they tend to be, hey, I really like that issue. Hey, that was so awesome. Hey, you guys suck. When are you going to put Peter and Mary Jane back together? And then poor Nick Lowe has to then explain how, well, we found that people are actually quite happy with the fact that Peter and Mary Jane aren't together. And the rest of us are reading this like, bollocks. All you ever do is print letters from people saying, why aren't you putting them back together? I've never seen a letter saying, I stand by your decision. I think you guys did the right thing. Yeah. But that's another show. But they're a bit trite. But the Starman letters page became this kind of exploration of...
it became a community.
Yeah.
Of like-minded...
Yes, like-minded community. What do you like to collect?
Yeah.
What's your tether to the past?
And as you're conveying all this, I'm trying to remember some things I said in the first podcast, and it just struck me. I remember now why this character appealed to me. Not only just my golden age affinity for all things Justice Society, he is a collector.
Yes, that's right.
That made it more relatable than any other superhero. As much as you want to be Green Lantern, as much as you want to be the Flash, this guy's a collector. There's little scenes where he's out in the world looking for stock for his shop, and he is wheeling and dealing. And while I don't necessarily go out and haggle over comic book prices, you do know the hunt. And in the very first trade paperback, was the first 6 issues that were reprinted together, Mike Aldred wrote the foreword, and I'm kicking myself for not having it in front of me to speak to it word for word for you, the audience. But the thing that he started off with, and when we did this the first time, it resonated with all 3 of us. I like stuff.
Yes.
That's the beginning statement. And he talked about how James tapped into that, that all of us like stuff. And as I kept reading that just rang with me, because you look around your comic room, all of you out there, you look around your office. If you're listening to this podcast, you've got some action figures.
Could do. Yeah.
You've got some comics, some trade paperbacks.
Yeah. You might have a movie poster framed on your wall.
Some old glasses, drinking glasses. Maybe you have some old, the Shadow 3D glasses.
There you go.
A couple of T-shirts. That drew me into Starman on a whole different level. The idea that this guy who has no superpowers is all mechanical. This rod,
that he didn't even build.
Yeah, he didn't even build. He just knows it was his dad. I mean, how many of us? Oh, that was the thing in Dad's office.
Right.
We can all relate to that.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, you don't touch that. Or deep down, you knew Dad wanted you to pick up his hammer and go out there and help build the shed, or start the first time you start that lawnmower, and don't run over the neighbor's cat. This is for all of us who have fathers and have unresolved issues. This also spoke to us in a way that no other comic dared address.
Absolutely.
And they didn't beat you over the head.
No.
There are several times where in the beginning when Jack is making fun of his brother for being Starman in the flashbacks and accidentally insults his father's legacy, and the dad goes, I don't think I can see you for a while. But then the son turns around and goes, but we're still getting together for dinner on Sunday. And you hear the dad with that disappointment, yes, we're getting together.
Yes.
And what parent hasn't had that type of conversation? Before I forget, in this whole run, my favorite 4 issues is when he crosses over with the Sandman, Wesley Dodds. At the time, Matt Wagner is writing Sandman Mystery Theater, whole different style art, but same noir feel.
Yes.
And they crossed over, 1 issue of Starman, then 1 issue of Sandman Mystery Theater, and the Mystery Theater was a flashback to World War II, Sandman running around with Jack's father, and seeing Wesley Dodds with his little cane put on his gas mask again, and try to be relevant, and kind of is. I don't know why I was cheering for that.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And it actually turned me on to Sandman Mystery Theater, because I picked up the first couple of issues, but it didn't really grab me. But then when I saw it again, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back and read it. And once again, the art style is not for everybody, but it's a good art style, and it fit the noir feel.
Guy Davis, yeah. It's a very... there's a roughness to it, but I think it fits that time period, because everything is changing very fast, and it's not that I mean, I wasn't alive during that time, but I can imagine with everything going on, the stirrings of war in Europe, you've just come out of Prohibition, music is changing, fashion is changing, style is changing, things are changing so rapidly that you would kind of look at the world in a you can't snap focus on anything, and Guy Davis's art, there's a kind of a roughness to it, but it's gorgeous, and Guy Davis draws people the way that people look. So he's not. There are no washboard abs.
Oh no, Wesley Dodds is not
not at all.
A well-cut, defined superhero.
No, there's no J. Scott Campbell-esque women, or no, not at all, not at all.
That was the first time I ever saw Sandman when might need to eat a salad or something.
And it's fantastic because and while we're on the subject of the art, we talked a bit about James Robinson, but Starman did not come about just on. I think the success of Starman, I should say, didn't come about just on James Robinson's writing. Tony Harris's art it's perfect. It is just so perfect for this book. So you've got Stan and Jack, and you've got
Claremont and Claremont Cochran.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've got these. To me, the marriage of Robinson's thoughts and Tony Harris's art is it's a match made in heaven, because those things that we've talked about, the stuff, he draws the stuff. So you see the stuff. This city that they are in, Opal City, it's this sort of Art Deco wonderland, and Tony Harris draws the living heck out of that. There's one little anecdote I know, and I think it's something like Tony Harris loves drawing pirates. James Robinson knew that, so he actually puts some elements in the story that involves pirates. And Tony Harris draws fantastic pirates.
He does. And I remember the origin of this episode also, the first time, is I had just met Tony Harris at the small convention in Irving.
Right.
Because I had him sign the poster for. Now, this is how long this has been. When Jeff Johns' last Justice Society, that took 19 years to complete,
Yes.
12 issues, came out. By then, Tony was drawing the B covers for about the last 7 issues that were going to come out. And they were in for each decade. Like, so the poster I got was from the 1940s. And that's where I also learned he had as much of a vested interest in Jack's legacy as James did. And he was at the time showing me the sketching for what would have to be Justice Society B cover number 10 or 9, because it would have been the David Goyer, James Robinson Justice Society from the relaunch. And, and Jack was dead center. He was like, and Jack, Jack had to be the focus of this one, because the next B cover before the series ended was the final JSA that we were running around with, which had these weird kids that I still don't understand what Johns was doing. But first off, if you ever meet Tony Harris, do not make the mistake of calling any ship the Jolly Rancher, because he will tell you that he didn't name it after a effing piece of candy. And I tried to say that's just where my brain went. Sorry, I know it's Jolly Roger, because he did have a bunch of pirate stuff.
Yeah.
And he's also very selective about what fans he will let on his Facebook page. Mm-hmm. You have to let him know where you met him. And the first thing he'll tell you is, don't be an asshole.
Yes.
And that was great. I enjoy being on his Facebook page. I hope that the rumors are true. There hasn't been a solicitation for it yet. But him and James Robinson are supposed to be doing a Black Label 4-issue Starman. They keep talking, keep hoping. And if it does or doesn't happen, I will tell anyone listening to our voice, go to your local comic book shop and grab the first companion of Starman. Read it.
Yes.
I know I'm rambling a little bit about it. Stephen has done a much better job of drilling down the topics, because we both compliment each other in these situations, and every one of his points are things that I remember touching on in the book. Even the little details that Tony puts in about the stuff that he goes and finds. There were old Burger King glasses he drew that I was like, I had that Burger King glass. That was great. I can go into my mother's cupboard and find it. There's also, and I'm just looking at it right now, there's a very sweet Christmas Santa Claus story. Where Jack helps a kind of down and out mall Santa reunite with family. The family we haven't talked about that runs rampant through this is the O'Dares.
The O'Dares. Well, this is so. Again, this is a book. If I'd summarize it, in one word.
Because the book wouldn't be the same without the O'Dares.
No. So explain Starman in one word. I would say legacy. Ultimately, that's for me. That's what it is. And James Robinson, the fact that he, after Starman, I don't know if he did it during or if Starman had ended, but Robinson did it was an Elseworlds miniseries called The Golden Age.
I think that was before this.
Okay. And that basically was sort of a kind of a more adult contemporary look at these Golden Age characters. Kind of similar to what Darwin Cook did with New Frontier, which there'll be another podcast at some point.
We do need to do that.
About Darwin Cook's New Frontier.
And kids, remind us to do the Howard Chaykin Hey Kids comics.
Yes, absolutely. So he does this, and then DC launches a new JSA title on the backs of the Golden Age that James Robinson was writing. I think he wrote like the first year, and then it transitioned with David S. Goyer. It transitioned over to Jeff Johns.
Yeah, him and Goyer. Actually, we looked this up. I think he and Goyer ran almost up to 2 years because part of them were involved in the Return of Hawkman story, but Johns was on it. John showed up at around issue 8 or 9, and so they all had
Right.
But then Johns, I think it was completely Johns during that Great Darkness saga where
Right.
it's the second time Obsidian and Cobra and Eclipse.
that's right.
So that I think all of that was all Johns. But yes, because Robinson handled Jack Knight retiring from the JSA, passing on his torch to Courtney with kind of a gentleman's agreement of you don't really get to use this guy anymore unless I okay it.
Yes, and DC have kept that, which I'm always I always think that's kind of neat when they recognize that you can't, just like you really can't have a Morpheus story without Neil Gaiman.
Yes.
You really can't have a Jack Knight story without James Robinson.
And if you're keeping score, Jack Knight made a quick appearance in Identity Crisis. He was at Sue Dimney's funeral.
That's right.
And then recently, the Justice Society comic that Jeff Johns was wrapping up, he and Ted Knock did an extra Courtney issue. And any of y'all that know that Courtney Whitmore is basically Jeff Johns lost a sister and based the character on her.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's really, Jeff is writing about his sister at that point. At the end of the splash page, last panel is all of these people that affected her life, and there's Jack and his child. And that was I was very excited to see all that little nod. They don't ever speak. There's no dialogue. No. And then did Jack show up in Death Metal, Dark? We talked about something. You were skating around that. We were.
I don't know.
Or he got turned down where he couldn't be.
I don't know. I know that in Blackest Night, because
they did that. Issue 81.
Yeah,
and James wrote that
as part of Blackest Night. They did a special issue. I think it was probably 7 books.
Yeah.
That had ended previously, and they got an extra title, and they brought either the original creators or I think they did the Question issue 37 or 38.
They did Teen Titans with Terra. They did.
But Denny O'Neil didn't write it. I think Greg Rucka wrote it. But at that point, I think Greg Rucka was kind of looking after Vic Sage Question. But they did a Starman one. And Robinson, and I believe the art is Tony Harris on that as well. It's just it's going to sound it's a lovely book. It just works. I've kind of derailed my brain here a little bit thinking about what you were saying, Scott, about the nature of Jack Knight's relationship with his dad.
Yes.
Because I think it's probably every father's dream to think that not only fathers and sons, okay, it's every father's dream to think that your son is going to look at you as being a good man, a capable man, maybe even a great man, you never know. And the things that you have done as a parent, whatever your job is in life, that will be looked at as, boy, when I grow up, I'm going to be just like my dad, and and whatever that job is. My father was a metal worker. He was a welder. He bent metal into shapes. He made ornamental fences and window guards and pretty much anything that it was all like a lot of custom work. And my dad was absolutely blue collar. He would come home at the end of the day. He was grimy. He wore one of those utility shirts that had an embroidered circle on it with his name, Jim. And he would open the fridge and he would pull himself a Pabst Blue Ribbon. And he would knock that thing down, and then he would convince my mom, who was probably cooking, that, let's go to McDonald's, because my dad really liked McDonald's. My dad was very, very very blue-collar working class type. And I know that in his mind, nothing would give him greater joy than to think his son would be like, when I grow up, I want to be a welder just like my dad.
Yep.
So having a son who actually was like, I don't want to do that at all. I want to go and write and do something artistic and, intellectual and all these things that you're not. And I know my dad was, it was heartbreaking. And that's
what rings through this book. And
that's what rings through this story. It's
and you even find out that as kids, it was Jack that was dressing up as Starman, and his brother making fun of him, and sometimes then protecting him. It's always said, fathers and sons. Your father's your first hero.
Yes.
And if it's a daughter, that's their first love.
Right.
And they grow out of it.
Yes.
We find out our parents are humans and all of that. But, for everyone that has a parent, I mean, there is a storyline about Jack's mom in here too. She dies very early on.
Yes.
But there is another very interesting element in here that runs the same with his communication with his brother. So it is definitely a family-driven book.
Yes.
The Knight family, the O'Dare family, who you find
right.
You go
yes,
back
you
to
mentioned that. Sorry, I derailed this.
This redheaded Irish cop family, couldn't be more stereotypical.
English hating.
Yeah, couldn't be more stereotypical. And you find out that they've been part of Opal since the Old West, and there's a DC Western character they tie in, a scout hunter, into that family. So you're dealing, and the Knight family has always helped out the O'Dare family and the Starman world, and watching the kids look at Jack and go, well, your dad's kind of a great man, always helped our pops out. You're kind of a punk at first. Very, once again, plays into family, and if you've had a close family, for families that are friends, you kind of know that vibe.
No, that's it. So the O'Dares, they are, as you say, Scott. So they're like multi-generational police officers in Opal City. So clearly these were kids. So in the book, there's like
couple of brothers and a sister.
Even the girl where everyone was like, oh, she won't be a cop. Oh yeah, she's absolutely going to be a cop. Their dad is a cop. He's still on the force, and that when these O'Dares were kids, I mean, their dad was their hero. Their dad is still their hero. Whereas Jack Knight, when he was a kid, his dad was his hero, and then he grew up, and then he went through adolescence, and something changed. And not to belabor the point, but I need to go back to just on that note.
Please.
Is that when I was a little boy, I remember my dad loved Westerns. It didn't matter. He wanted, Gene Autry and the Lone Ranger,
Clayton Moore.
If that was on TV, son, get in here, Lone Ranger's on, And we watched Lone Ranger, and when I was a little boy, it was like, oh, this is fantastic. Lone Ranger, and, anything Western cowboys. If there was a John Wayne movie on, come on, son, we're gonna watch The Searchers. We're gonna watch, Tie a Yellow Ribbon or whatever. Big Jake. And then I moved to England, and I grew up, and I went through teenage years, and when I came back into my dad's life, I was 18. My dad really hadn't changed. Oh, I've changed it quite a bit. So my dad is like, well, we'll watch a movie, take a look. Because my dad had video cassette library that was just huge. And I remember one day we got onto the subject of John Wayne and Westerns. And the arrogant little shit that I was at 18, I start shooting off at the mouth about, well, it's all just kind of American bullshit propaganda, isn't it? And this and that, and start trying to talk about Vietnam and American politics, and just so that I've got that kind of, oh, it's all just bad. And to his credit, he didn't beat the shit out of me. What he did is he just kind of looked and listened and then changed the subject, and that was the end of it. And I kind of felt like, yeah, I won that conversation. Several decades later, I look back, I want to punch myself in the nose until it bleeds, because that was a missed opportunity to reestablish.
Yeah.
And that's what you want as a parent. You look for opportunities to reestablish the connections that you had with your children when they were young, because that's when those connections felt at their purest, or unencumbered by the realities of life or what have you. Not that you don't want to see your children grow up. Of course you do.
No.
Okay. And you want them to be independent, and you want them to be successful, and all these things. But there's a part, I think, of every parent who gives a damn about their kids, I'll specify that you look for those opportunities to, and my dad he's been gone, 13, 14 years now, and there are times when there is nothing I wouldn't give than to be able to sit on the couch and watch a John Wayne Western with my dad. And it's the want a game of catch. It's that whole Field of Dreams thing. Yeah.
No, and I get
and that comes through in this book.
It does
enormously.
It very much does. And as kids become parents, is when we get more reflective on
yes, we do.
Those special moments, because God help us when our kids figure out we're human.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm not saying we have to be perfect.
No.
But let's face it. No one wants to think about their grandparents bumping uglies. That's not something they want to think about.
We just earned our rating. For the day.
We did, and you know who's usually responsible for that. So let's keep up the trend. But but also resonates through here. In fact, to give you an idea of how realistic the character development is, Jack as a hero. There's another section here in the first 6 issues where I think any of us, if we had a cosmic rod, would fall into this category. There's a bounty hunter that's given a specific task to go pick up a poster that allows somebody to cross into a poster, or it's a shirt. It's a shirt, I believe. Cross into a nether region.
Well, there is a poster.
There is a poster, but
there is also the shirt.
This. I'm looking at the shirt. So this, the narration of the way this guy comes into the shop is very much. Jack has just gotten done dealing with Opal City being on fire. He's in a scruffy shirt. He also reminds you he had a little martial arts training, got up to like a yellow or green belt, as we all did when we tried to do this. So this guy comes in, pulls an Uzi, Jack pulls his cosmic rod. They are pointing it at each other, and it is very like, hey, my boss sent me to get this thing. It has all these magical powers and can grant you access to the dimension. And Jack stares at him for a second and goes, what? Well, I don't want that in my shop. Why would I want that? And the guy's like, you don't want the shirt? No, I don't want the shirt. I can't let you steal it from me on principle. And the guy's like, you'll let me buy it? And, they're pointing webs at it. Yeah. Jack is like, sure. You go find it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to know about it. Leave the cash on the table. And then it kind of, it's almost like they shook hands and went the other way. Yeah. And then it goes into him going to dinner with his father. And then the last panel is that this guy used the shirt to disappear.
Yes.
And it's those little moments as we're lamenting about our fathers and all these other things. But when you read that, you're almost like, that would be me if I had Yes, I have.
Oh, yeah.
I have this weapon. I could probably blow a hole in the wall and fly, but I'm tired, man. I just got beaten up, set on fire.
Right.
Watch my girlfriend I think is hot is turning into mist. I don't understand any of that. And you want what? Very realistic. Once again, I cannot recommend. This is one of the top 5 tomes that I recommend to people.
Yes.
That come into the shop.
Absolutely.
After you do the obligatory first volume of Sandman.
Right.
You do that because who doesn't like that. I grabbed this. And there's a few others I won't bore you with at this moment, but I've rambled on about this, but I'm just going to tell you there are 5 companions that encompass this entire series. 4 maybe volumes.
No. So the compendiums, there's 2.
Is there?
Yes.
I'm thinking of the other
You're
ones.
thinking of the omnibuses.
Omnibuses, okay.
When they did the omnibuses, there were 6.
I'm sorry, I got my is's confused. In isms and immuins.
Right.
It's worth the hop.
Oh yeah.
We have them available at multiverse.shop.
We have to say this because
Yes, that's the only way we can pay the rent
for tax reasons.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it comes with absolutely the highest recommendation possible. If you like superhero comics, you'll love it. If you don't like superhero comics, you'll still love it. If you like
cool noir artwork.
If you're interested in different genres, if you're interested in basically following a writer, James Robinson, who he's given this. If it was me, I would look at it as a gift.
Yeah. Start to finish.
There you go. You get to start it, you get to finish it. It's completely on your own terms, and within this framework, you can tell any kind of story that you want. Flashbacks, flash forwards.
Yep.
There's a space opera. There's a horror. I mean, it's just there's so many elements, and then you get the little things like what you were just saying with the shirt. There's a character that Robinson introduces, Bobo Minetti, who's he was the bank robber who goes to jail for like 20 years, and he comes out and he ends up getting hired as a security consultant. This is Robert Mitchum. He's this big, he smokes, he drinks, he's got that rat-a-tat-tat dialogue because James Robinson loves old movies. I think it's in the letters page. I have to go back and look. There's a thing where I think James Robinson talks about a dream he has, where he's sitting, I think, by a pool, and on one of those kind of old fold-out Lido chairs, with the vinyl.
Head and the vinyl strips, the headrest, and the foot. Yeah.
And the person sitting next to him is Lee Marvin, and he's having a conversation with Lee Marvin, and I'm like, yeah, oh my gosh, And if any of us who've ever had a dream where you got to interact with it, I have a dream that I've told people about this where I got tapped on the shoulder to join Frank, Dean, and Sammy.
I got to join the Rat Pack.
And we sang on stage in our tuxedos, and we had a laugh and joke. It's one of the best dreams, and I still remember it. It was just one of the greatest dreams I've ever had, because there's a bit of wish fulfillment. We're never going to be able to be in America in the 1950s. We're never going to be in America, the disco era of the 1970s, and that's covered as well. And that's a good thing. There are good reasons why we shouldn't do that. But at the same time, the nostalgia is like, it was kind of cool in the 1950s, it was kind of cool in the 1940s. You want to explore that, and we can only do that through movies. But James Robinson writes a comic that's like, actually, there's a kind of a way.
And once again, as much as we talk about the letters pages, if you go into a local comic book shop and try to find the floppies, they're only about $2 or $3 a whack.
Oh yeah,
it is a, depending on how you want to consume your
content.
Your sub, this is one of those, maybe drop down $10, $15 just after about issue 8,
Yeah.
9, so we'll get the letters going, and just read those letters pages.
Oh, yeah. They're super fun.
Yeah, I mean, you might even get lucky and go to a convention, find them in the dollar box.
You might. So before we close out, because I know we did this when we did the first version of this, okay. So a big element of the story, obviously, is stuff and
Yes.
collections. Okay. And I remember from the letters page, James Robinson he personally collects those Viewmaster
Yes.
3D reels. And there were certain kind of obscure ones from...
He was
I think,
looking for or something, kind of reaching out to people saying, hey,
if you've got this, we could swap, we could do a trade. I've got, an old Addams Family one, but I'm looking for this. And hey, I remember those Viewmaster reels.
I still have them at my mother's house.
Yeah, see, I'm so jealous of you, mate, because you've still got these things.
I didn't cross oceans.
Yeah.
I am 2 miles from my mother's house. Now I'm 4 miles from my house. So you see how adventurous my world has been.
But there are those things that you accumulate, that you hold on to. And I think when we talked about this before, I was talking about my love for T-shirts, graffiti designs T-shirts. And they did a Starman one, and I have the Starman shirt. They also did a Starman Henley that I had. That one's lost, but I've got the T-shirt. But just, like you said, Star Wars Burger King glasses.
Yep.
And the glass is so thin on those. I was at an antique mall, and they've got a couple Empire Strikes Back ones, and I'm like, God, this glass is so thin, like it could shatter so easily. But I remember being a kid.
Yeah.
I mean,
you drank in it regularly?
Oh yeah.
There wasn't...
My dad, like I said, he was huge, loved McDonald's. We had the McDonald Land characters. They did glasses, the McDonald Land characters.
Yeah.
And we had a couple of full sets several times over, because my dad used to go to McDonald's all the time. We seem to have a disproportionately large number of grimaces for some reason. And so my memory is, as a child, like I would usually, if I was drinking out of those glasses, it was probably a grimace. But
well, there you go, kids.
Yeah.
We've actually we've talked longer when it's just the two of us than the four. So we're going to wrap this up, because we know 20 minutes and people start falling asleep.
No, I don't think so. Go get the book. Go read it.
Yeah, go get it. And if you do, put it in the comment section. Let us know.
Yeah.
Jason has now expanded our YouTube page, where you get to see some little videos about his comic reviews, and we're going to start trying to add some content there. We're learning how to do that.
That's right.
Stephen's daughter, who works here with us, is doing some of the short reels, so she would love a howdy out there, and let us know if y'all are enjoying those, or if there's a reel she should make about a particular book you're looking at. She would be happy to do that.
That's right. And or if you buy the book and you enjoy it, come in and talk to us about it.
Come find us.
Come find us Saturday afternoons. Come into the shop and we'll talk. Tell us about the things that you collect, some obscure thing that you're hunting for. I love those conversations.
They get us through the day. It makes us feel relevant.
That's right.
If we don't see y'all before, then y'all have a happy Thanksgiving. We're about a week out when we're doing this. Hopefully it falls within there where you're not going, hey, it's Valentine's Day. Why are they wishing us happy Thanksgiving? But from all of us here, we appreciate you.
Gobble, gobble.
Thank you for listening to the Multiverse Comics Podcast. If you'd like to meet us in person, you can do that at the Multiverse in Hurst, Texas. That's our brick and mortar store. If you'd like to shop with us online, you can do that at www.multiverse.shop. Until next time, keep reading comics.